I'm very excited because it is my pleasure to introduce someone who many of you already know. I actually have not had the opportunity to meet Joyce, but Joyce Kullman has accepted our invitation to join us today to talk about her insights and experience and all of her nuggets of valuable learnings over the past, would it have been 15 years of working in the consortium? Is that right, Joyce?
Actually 20 years.
20. I missed 5 years. I'm sorry.
Oh no, but it's
So,
like dog years. So you're looking at about 140 years. No, no, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
yeah, and so Joyce is joining us from the Vasculitis Foundation, and I'm going to actually let Raj sort of help navigate the questions that we came up with as the PAG group that kind of put together a framework for Joyce to kind of talk about. Go ahead, Raj.
Okay. Oh, just, it was on a different screen. Can you guys see the questions?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we just kind of broke it down into like a few different categories based on discussion during previous calls. Just wanted to ask about overall organizational health, collaborative successes, and lessons learned, and really kind of the most important thing you learned from the experience of being involved in the RDCRN with your consortium. And so I'll just kind of kick it off at the top. And please, everybody, as we move along, if you have questions that you'd like to ask, we want to keep this loose so that you guys are really, able to get the information and the insights that you really want to hear. So just starting off, Joyce, do you feel that your organization is stronger after being part of your consortium?
Absolutely. I was thinking about this because we do go back 20 years. We're one of the founding members of the RDCRN. When this all came up, the VF, our patient organization, we were not involved in research. We weren't thinking about doing research. We were focusing on raising awareness and identifying patients and helping patients get care. And so when we were asked to join the VCRC, it was an amazing opportunity to get into research without having to lead it ourselves. We had partners to work with. I think when through the work of the VCRC, Peter Merkel, Dr. Merkel out of Boston, now Penn, he was our PI. And then we had an amazing group of co-investigators from 3 other centers around the country. And it was amazing to be able to work with them and think about how to build an infrastructure. And that's what we did. We built from the ground up. How do we do research in the vasculitis field? And we built it in the US, and now we've taken it to Europe and across Asia and to Australia and New Zealand. So it's been an amazing 20 years of putting pieces in place so that we can actually do clinical research. And when we started, we didn't have any treatments approved for the treatment of any form of vasculitis. Now we have 6 FDA approved treatments, plus we have several more in the pipeline with many, many more clinical trials going on. And because vasculitis is so rare, many of our trials are international to gather enough patients together to do the research. So, we would not be where we are without our work with the VCRC.
That is wonderful. I'm just going to bundle the next 2 questions together because you kind of addressed them a little bit already. In addition to what you've already said, are there any other ways your PAG has benefited from being part of the larger CPAG or RDCRN? And what has your PAG been able to do after participating in RDCRN or partnering with your consortium that may not have been possible on your own?
So I would really love to stress how important the team at the NIH, the RDCRN people, the DMCC people, how much they have helped us over the years. I mean, when I say we came to this knowing nothing, we knew nothing. I mean, in all capital letters about doing research, the VF side, of course, our investigators knew, but we were able to ask questions. We asked questions of the NIH, our program manager, the project managers. We'd never looked at a grant application. We had no idea what we would be working on. And so we were constantly reaching out to our project manager, or program manager and saying, I don't understand. So, being able to pull in those resources to help us understand, from a patient advocacy, what should we be doing so that we had our own goals also with our group. Our patients knew nothing about research either. So it was educating them. And we had so many resources that we could call upon. And I would encourage everybody who's at this, find out who's on your team and then find out who should be on your team. Reach out, ask questions, ask for help.
Wonderful. I'll just pause to see if anybody has any questions or comments before we move to the next question.
Joyce, I was just going to ask, were you with the Vasculitis Foundation from the very beginning?
No, I joined, it was established in 1986, and I joined in 1995 after my dad was diagnosed with vasculitis.
Okay. Were you with the consortia grant, I guess I should say, from the very beginning?
When dinosaurs roamed the earth, and we joined the VCRC, and there were 4 different patient advocacy groups at the time who were involved in the world of vasculitis, and we have embraced all of them, and they all joined in with the VF, and so that was something we benefited from early on. We were the largest organization in the group, and so bringing everybody in under our umbrella was one of our goals also. So we started in 2003. I went to a meeting. I had no clue why I was at this meeting. It was like, hey, Joyce, we want to talk about doing this thing, and we want you involved, and okay. Day one.
That's incredible. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And that's a question I have. So with the later grant applications, are the patient advocacy groups, are they involved from day one with the study design or the grant application design?
Great question. My consortia, which we're just coming up to the end of our 5th year, we were not as a patient association. We were brought in at the very, about a month before it was awarded. It had already been submitted.
Okay. I think it's,
but really, I don't know how everybody else is. It's a great question.
So I think
we've been part of it for 9 years, and we were part of it from the very beginning of planning. So.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting if you're not involved from day one, that you understand what are the milestones, what are the goals, and do they align with the organizations, the patient advocacy organization? Because definitely there's goals in the research area, but there's also goals for the organization, the patient groups. So I think it's really important. And that's where you just sit down with the PI and walk through the application and say, what are we planning to do with this? And Andrea, since you're 5 years in, what have you learned since you didn't know about it beforehand?
The collaboration that has developed, I would say mostly, and the growth to interest by researchers globally, because all of us, obviously, as you mentioned, it's international. I mean, we as just one standalone PAG, we're just sort of in our own silo of being here in the United States. And I think that the consortia, with the interest from the researchers and joining on, and I cannot stress how valuable I find the monthly meetings that our consortia has of getting together just to talk, just to connect, because then when you show up at a meeting, you know these people, or if they have their little Zoom box with them, you know these people because you're on these calls with them. But I think that it's really, I would definitely encourage the RDCRN to, if they can, require that the PAGs be involved with an application submission, like really involved, not just mentioned in a grant application, because there was a lot of catch up. Year one was our PAG just catching up on what the aims were, what the milestones were, what the plan was. But yeah, here we are. So,
yeah, I think those are all good points.
Michelle says in the chat, amazing, Joyce, to go from 0 FDA approved therapies to 6. That is phenomenal.
Thank you.
And I don't see any other comments yet, so I'll give it back to you, Raj.
Okay. So just moving on to collaborative successes. So, what have you learned that helped strengthen your relationship with your PIs? And actually on the flip side as well, what has helped strengthen your relationship potentially with other PAG organizations?
So the PIs, communicating with them, that was really difficult in the early days. That was when email, there was a weird screeching noise before you went on email. So we didn't have the instant communication of texting. So we really had to build out communication style with our PIs and with the co-PIs also. We did a lot of work with our project manager, Anne, who was our first manager. And she would hold a monthly meeting for us, for all of the groups that were the patient advocacy groups, to bring us up to speed. And then once a year, we would meet in person. At least once a year, we would meet in person with the entire team, with the steering committee, to go over everything, not only that had been done that year, but what were the future goals being set. So, communication was just key. And for the patient advocacy groups, oh my gosh, I would not be here without the other patient advocacy groups. Michelle, we go back. We have moaned together. We have strategized together. We have, what do you think of this? Have you ever heard of this? So working with the other patient advocacy groups has just been amazing. Because we never went into this wanting to create the wheel. If there's a wheel out there that we liked, we just wanted to adopt that for the VF. And so we were very interested in how do other people do things, because we think people are smart and we want to learn from each other.
Wonderful. Any comments or additional questions from anyone at this point? Okay. So just moving to lessons learned. I know this is a big one. What do you wish you knew earlier as part of RDCRN or your consortium, even as a CPAG? And, what would you have done differently?
I would have learned the acronyms earlier. I went to a meeting one time and one of the co-op PIs said, we're using too many acronyms and everybody needs to quit using acronyms. And I was the next speaker and my whole talk was littered with acronyms. And so I stumbled through that talk because it was so hard. But the RDCRN has acronyms, the NIH has acronyms, our vasculitis has a million. And so I know that sounds stupid, but I wish I had known what the structure of the RDCRN was and the larger picture of all the different institutes at the NIH. That's something I didn't know, and I wish I'd studied that more clearly, because it was hard to figure out who to work with or how to, who could we reach out to for help. And so it was just a huge learning process for me. And what would I have done differently? I would have reached out for more help, asking questions, trying to ask other people what they did. Because we had Steve Groft. He was an amazing pioneer in the whole field of research. And I wish I had sat down with him more often and just talked to him about his passion, because he was just so amazing. So, but I think asking for help and just admitting you don't know something. So not to sit on a meeting and pretend like you know the answer when you don't. That's what I learned.
Wonderful. Any additional questions at this point?
I was just going to mention two of the comments in the chat was Kristen Whedon, the Porphyria Consortium has a similar experience. They also are included on all the calls and valued by the PIs. And then Catherine also seconded what Joyce just said, that maybe having a guide of some sort that could outline the map sort of, or the chart that Joyce just recommended, because I think I'm in that boat too, where it's wondering like, what is this division? I rely on Tina. I don't know if Tina's still on the call, but ask Tina or ask Raj, like who's the right person for this? But to really see it visually and to understand it would probably be very helpful.
Yeah, I think if you understood the roles of the DMCC, what they do, what the RDCRN people do, the NIH institutes, where can you go for help? Or to help you promote a program. I think the next question is the most important thing you learn from experience. I think you can't get everything done overnight. It takes time to do good research. It takes time to recruit patients in. It takes time to build a patient advocacy group. I think to balance your expectations about what you want to get done. I think having a strategic plan, that's something that helped us with our application. We knew what we were going to work on every year in our research. And that helped us with our patient advocacy work to factor in what are we going to do? What part is that? The VCRC is our research arm. And so that takes care of that. But what does our advocacy and our support and education programs look like? And, we work very closely with our PIs, the co-PIs. That's how we built out our VF research program, which we funded over $3 million of seed grants through our research program, which is separate from the VCRC. But we use many of the investigators from the VCRC, our multiple clinical sites, our research sites. We're all one big happy family. We do different things with different family members, but together, that's how we've been able to move forward across the world with our understanding of vasculitis, bringing people together, because our community is so small that we had to be international in our focus on research. So I just think bringing people together is really, really critical. And not everybody participates in every project every time, unless you're Peter Merkel.
I have a question for you, Joyce. You've mentioned that your community is very small. And our community is very small. Did you find that being part of the consortia helped bring in more patients? You talked about before the RDCRN, you were focusing on awareness and diagnosis. And did you find your community grow, or did you continue those efforts at the same time to try and grow it?
That was funny because we announced the VCRC was going to start enrolling patients. And so hundreds and hundreds of patients emailed us and said, we're ready to enroll. And we didn't have it built. We were still building out the enrollment platform. And so the VCRC has allowed us to connect with so many more patients around the world that we have brought into our advocacy group, to our patient group. So I look at it, we had to teach our patients about research, about participating in research, but also about the VF. And it's been an amazing partnership.
Thank you. That's helpful. We also are a very small community and have a really hard time reaching families, and just trying to get 40 patients in a clinical trial has been a huge challenge. We're writing the FDA asking for them to accept 30, in our trial. So we're trying to go down and down because we're just having a really hard time there. So that's good to hear that with money and funding and research, they will come.
Yeah. And, you can also look at the inclusion and exclusion criteria in a clinical trial and say that study is never going to work. It's too burdensome for the patient. Or no, this is a great study design. So I think helping the researchers understand the patients and the patients understanding the goals of the research projects. What do we want to accomplish?
You said you had international trial locations.
Yeah, don't do it. No,
Really?
the earlier person mentioned the how hard it is to get contracts signed between the international sites. It is challenging, and it can take 9 months. It can take a year, but we have done international studies. We have to. We don't have enough patients in the U.S. to do good research. But you ask questions. Again, ask questions. Michelle, you've done a lot of that, setting up your centers. I hope when you're asked, you'll talk about setting up the centers and the criteria, things like that.
Thank you. Any other questions for Joyce?
Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you for joining us.
And even though we're not part of the RDCRN, the VCRC continues our work. And so we're happy. I love learning. I always read the newsletters and everything. So I can't say thank you enough to the RDCRN for all their support over the years. It's been amazing.
Yeah, we like to say, I think, among our leadership team that you're graduating. It doesn't mean that you're gone.
Right.
You just graduated from the RDCRN.
Exactly. So thank you again for the invitation.
Yep. Thank you.